The wind cut across the plains like a blade, carrying dust, dry grass, and old memories. The ranch stood alone against the horizon, weathered and stubborn, much like the man who owned it. Caleb Holt had built his life on silence, on early mornings, aching hands, and long nights where words felt heavier than loneliness. He believed quiet was safer than hope, that solitude was better than loss. Love, he had learned the hard way, always asked for more than it gave. So when the knock came at his door just after sunset, it felt like an intrusion on a life carefully kept untouched. He opened the door to find a woman standing on his porch, her coat thin, her hair tangled by the wind, and her eyes holding something that made his chest tighten before he could stop it. She wasn't begging. She wasn't crying. She stood straight despite the cold, despite exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "I don't want anything," she said quietly, "just a place to stay." Caleb said nothing. Silence had always been his answer. Her name was Mara Ellis, though she didn't offer it right away. Caleb noticed small details instead, the way her hands trembled when she pulled them into her sleeves, the faint bruise near her temple, the worn boots that had walked too far. He could have closed the door. He should have. This ranch wasn't a shelter, and his heart wasn't a charity. But the memory of another night, another storm, another woman who had walked away because he couldn't speak when it mattered, froze him in place. He stepped aside, barns warmer than outside. He muttered, the first words he'd spoken to anyone in days. Mara didn't smile. She just nodded, as if she'd learned not to expect kindness to come with warmth. Caleb led her to the small guest room instead. He told himself it was temporary, one night, maybe two, that was all, but the ranch had a way of stretching moments into forever. Mara barely spoke that first evening. She ate quietly, slept lightly, and woke before dawn. By the time Caleb came into the kitchen, she was already cleaning, moving with a practiced efficiency that suggested survival rather than habit. "You don't have to do that," he said. She paused, then continued wiping the counter. "I like staying useful." Something about the way she said it, a shield wrapped in politeness, settled uneasily in his chest. Days passed, then weeks. Mara never asked questions, never pushed boundaries. She took on chores without being told, fixed a broken hinge, soothed a skittish horse that even Caleb avoided. The ranch began to feel different, warmer, not because of words, but because of presence. Caleb noticed how the horses responded to her voice, how laughter slipped out of her when she thought she was alone, how she flinched at sudden noises yet stood her ground when work grew hard. She carried pain quietly, the way he did. That scared him. At night, when the house fell silent, Caleb found himself listening for her footsteps, her breathing, proof that someone else existed within his carefully controlled world. He hated how much it mattered. Mara had come from a town that forgot people easily, a failed marriage, a job that vanished overnight, and a kindness that had been mistaken for weakness. She didn't share these things, but Caleb saw them in fragments. In the way she stiffened at raised voices, in the way she apologized for existing. One evening, a storm rolled in fast and violent. Thunder shook the windows. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. Caleb found Mara sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest. "It's just thunder," he said, unsure why he felt the need to explain. "I know," she whispered. "I just don't like surprises." He handed her a lantern and sat beside her, leaving space between them. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything unsaid. "You don't talk much," she said gently. Talking didn't save anyone. He replied before he could stop himself. Her eyes softened. "Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just lets someone know they're not alone." Caleb looked away. Love had once stood in front of him and asked for words. He'd given silence instead. The regret had stayed, settling into his bones like winter. As the storm passed, something shifted between them, subtle, fragile, dangerous. The town noticed Mara before Caleb realized what was happening. Whispers came with supplies and sideways glances. People assumed things. Caleb didn't correct them. He didn't confirm them either. Silence again. Mara heard the whispers anyway. One afternoon, she stood at the fence, watching the horizon like she was measuring the distance between staying and leaving. "I should go," she said quietly. Caleb's chest tightened. "You don't have to." She turned to face him. "You never asked me to stay." The words landed harder than any accusation. "I gave you a place," he said. She shook her head. "You gave me a roof, not a reason." That night, Caleb sat alone in the barn, listening to the animals breathe. He realized that silence had protected him from pain, but it had also cost him connection, warmth, and the one thing he claimed not to want. Mara packed her things at dawn. Caleb watched from the doorway, hands clenched, heart racing. Every instinct told him to let her go. That was safer, that was familiar, but safety was empty. "I don't know how to say things right," he said hoarsely. "I don't know how to promise I won't mess it up." Mara stopped. "I'm not asking for promises," she replied. "I'm asking for honesty." Caleb swallowed. The words felt foreign, but necessary. "I want you here, not because I owe you, because I choose you." Tears welled in her eyes, not dramatic, not loud. Just real. She set her bag down. Staying wasn't easy. Loving him wasn't simple. Caleb still struggled with words, still chose silence when fear crept in. But now, when it mattered, he tried. He learned that love didn't require perfection, only presence. Mara learned that needing someone didn't make her weak. The ranch remained quiet, but it was no longer lonely. Silence became something shared instead of endured. And on a land shaped by wind and time, two broken people built something steady, not through grand gestures, but through staying when leaving felt easier. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with declarations. Sometimes it begins with a door left open, and the courage to speak before silence takes everything away.